Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Got Felicia Cravens on. She is a contributor over at usdailyreview.com. Plus, she is an editor at the Free Radical Network. Plus, she is the Chief Executive Officer of RentARiot.com. And she is the Princess of Pandemonium. How are you?
I am great, although I'm telling you, it just never gets boring in politics. I don't know how many times I can say it in how many different ways, but there's always something going on, isn't there?
Always something going on, which is why I remain in a constant state of nausea. So let me ask you, did you see Ted Cruz on Jay Leno this past week?
I did, and kudos to Ted Cruz for being able to go into places like that. So many conservative Republicans don't think that they need to be there. They need to, go to these different venues that are, somewhat to a lot hostile. Ted Cruz is not afraid to go in any venue, and I really appreciate that.
That was definitely the Lion's Den. That was Daniel in the Lion's Den. You know what was weird about that whole deal was how well versed Jay Leno was. They actually made him do homework to do that interview. I don't know if you noticed that, but he has some specific information, some specific facts that that kind of I was kind of impressed. But on the other hand, I don't think I've ever seen Jay Leno more uncomfortable.
Well, and two, there was no funny about it. There wasn't that banter that you're used to that you would have seen if John McCain were on, that
right.
sort of thing. He was really deadly serious about the questions he was asking, and there wasn't a lot of humor in it, which I thought was a very interesting departure for Jay Leno. But that said, if you listen to the amount of applause lines that Jay got versus Ted Cruz got in the middle of this, in this obviously, less than friendly audience, Ted Cruz not only held his own, but he articulated conservatism very well to all those people who might not have heard it before.
Yeah, and I don't know how unfriendly that audience would be. I mean, think about it. How many Californians are sitting in that audience? I would say probably 80% of them were from all over the country who came to California. I've been on the set of those shows. People I was surrounded by were from everywhere. So there's been people from the Heartland who came to be spectators, and they probably brought their Heartland values with them, and it resonated. What Cruz said resonated with them way more than Leno's left coast perspective.
Well, possibly so, yeah.
Yeah. So I was intrigued by that. I found it very funny. The funniest part I found was Jay Leno's clear level of discomfort was really strong. Now, I'm noticing over there at your website, freeradicalnetwork.com, you use Spreecast personally for your show that you do on air. Tell us a little bit about your program.
Well, I have taken an extended hiatus, but I'm working with some other people who have some other shows, including a foreign affairs show that we do, where it's an hour of a funny and different look at things going on in the world, both the serious, where we're talking, there's a whole series on Syria and the difficult things that were going on before the president ever got into the huge, are we going to attack? Are we going to invade? That sort of thing. We were covering Syria for a long time, and it's called Foreign Matters because foreign issues do matter. But the guys there have, from the sublime to the ridiculous, there's even a segment every week. Meanwhile, in Russia, and I have learned from this segment how weird the Russians really are.
Yeah, okay, tell me about how weird the Russians are.
You would think you would find things like a bunch of guys on the back of a vehicle popping wheelies would be something you'd see out of, say, West Virginia or Alabama. They do that sort of weird stuff in Russia, and the bonus is, in Russia, everybody's got these dash cams on their cars because of the heavy insurance fraud in Russia. So you get a ton of crazy video coming out of Russia based on just these car video cams.
Fascinating. I didn't know that. So
I know, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And what is the background of your of the host of Foreign Matters?
One of my close friends that lives in town in Houston, actually, Peter Ream is the host there. He's got a hiatus till January now, but we have two other people, I think they're both from North Carolina right now who are doing that. Just regular guys who are fascinated about foreign issues, but haven't had an opportunity to get, this sort of publicity on issues that, say, you would get on a CNN or whatever. These guys delve into the structure of different governments. They've discovered how Australian Parliament works and how Brazil's government works and what's going on in these little pockets of the world, especially when it comes to, say, the Islamic world and the war on women and some of the horrible stories of rapes in India and other places around the world, and how women are disrespected there, contrasting that with the way that we complain here in the United States as a society about not having free birth control and calling that the war on women. So
it's very, very insulting if you think about it. Very insulting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially to these women who want to just be left alone. There's a great video they featured out of India from women in India who put it together in English called It's Your Fault. And it's all these women talking about how rape is their fault because that's sort of the cultural excuse that's been going on in that part of the world for years. And they talk about how you need to, not argue with your husband or whatever. If you get raped, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. It's a kind of a semi-humorous look, but it really drew the attention of a lot of the Indian public to how absurd those societal understandings of rape really are in those cultures.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about the U.S. Senate race here with John Cornyn, who right now, John Cornyn, is one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate. And this will last for about 12 more months. And then he'll go back to being Mr. Mediocre again when he has 6 more years before he faces re-election. Are you surprised that, a former congressman or even a current congressman or some other office holder hadn't gone after him as someone who's clearly wounded in the same way that, Dewhurst, I think, is wounded by their philosophical mediocrity. I was surprised, and I admit there's not a whole lot of Ted Cruz's running around out there. Right. Ted Cruz is an incredible candidate, a hard guy to beat, and that type of thing. But I'm kind of surprised that someone didn't try to take on Cornyn. What was your thoughts?
Well, is it interesting? Maybe you've not seen this. That there was a call briefly after the lieutenant governor race in Texas started heating up again, that people were saying we need to draft Dewhurst to run against Cornyn. Now, when you compare Ted Cruz and David Dewhurst, obviously the bigger upside was with Ted Cruz, and people in Texas recognized that and put him into office. But some people were making the same calculation of Dewhurst versus Cornyn and thinking that Dewhurst would be an upgrade over John Cornyn. I thought that was fascinating, and I talked to people in the Dewhurst campaign about that and asked them, seriously, is this something that's going on in discussions in the campaign? And they said, oh, no. We are dedicated to staying in Texas and being able to work hard and do what we can here. But we're intrigued that that's the rumor going around.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that may be the case.
Felicia.
Dewhurst might be the only person who could afford to do it.
Wow, that's incredible. Felicia Cravens has been our guest, as always. Loved having her on. FreeRadicalNetwork.com, also a contributor at our sister news website, USDailyReview.com. And you're listening to The Price of Business.